Well, damn, that was one way to end the season, but was it a good way to end the season? Hey there, this is your Matt Doodle to my Thomas Hands, Doodle my here with another video, and today I talk about Daredevil, Born Again, episode 9, the final episode of the season. I am so surprised and happy that we were able to actually get this far, to watch the entire show. Now, was it perfect? Obviously not. We all know this show was a Frankenstein mess of plot point from a show that was not well received to basically a sequel series to the Netflix Daredevil show. But was a good continuation? I honestly think it stumbled in a few places, but I do feel like it found its footing at the end. And I feel like that's because this episode and the last episode was where they knew exactly what to do without having to deal with the mess of the original show they had to work with, basically. And you can really tell that here because when we get into this episode, we get to see what happened to Poindexter before he got contracted to kill Foggy. It looks like he was in an actual hospital, or at least prison hospital, actually getting medication, actually getting help, or at least getting sedated. So he doesn't get violent because obviously this man can turn anything into a weapon, as we saw in the last episode where he used his freaking tooth. But we can't have nice things, so Vanessa came in to entice Poindexter to go back into his killer ways and kill Foggy because Vanessa realized that Foggy was getting close to something she had, worked on. And of course, she's doing illegal stuff, so she wants him and the other guy, Benny, dead, which is nice that we get more confirmation into what's happening. And I noticed that with Poindexter being sedated, he seems more remorseful, or at least not wanting to kill because of his medication. I'm not sure if it's just that or he actually felt bad. But this is Bullseye, so it's probably just the medication. But one thing that was actually pretty interesting was that this entire scene looked like it was probably happening when Poindexter was ready to shoot Kingpin. Also, that's what I realized. I thought he was going to kill Vanessa, but it was actually directed to Kingpin. I should have mentioned that in the last video. But it's interesting that he's thinking about that, to be honest. Now, since this is the final episode and final video I'm making about this show, at least the first season, I feel like I should have mentioned the intro they had for this entire show that I just didn't mention because I didn't know where to put it. But I really do like it with the stone structures crumbling down and then Daredevil rising back up. But I'm going to be very honest, I still kind of like the original version where it's more blood, and I love the soundtrack a little bit better. Maybe that's just me. What do you think? Did you like that? Please let me know in the comments down below. But now we're back in the present, right when Matt, got shot, and then it looks like now he's in the hospital, trying to get better. He's all drugged up. But in his drugged up state, since, he obviously can't see, he feels Kristen's hand, and instead of saying Kristen's name, he sends Karen's, which I do feel like was what they were trying to do in the show, because I did feel weird in a few episodes ago where looked like she was jealous of Karen, even though they never really mentioned her until that point. But I feel like that's what they were trying to do with this, which is why they say it here. And it obviously does mess with Kristen, and I do feel like that's going to be a big thing later on. And when Matt's actually able to, be more awake, he asks Kristen and McDuffie, what's happening? Where is Fisk? What is going to happen? He is dangerous. Lee, stay away from him. And obviously, Kristen is very weirded out by this and said, he was getting shot at. He's the mayor. And I think maybe this was the point. I'm not sure. But her naivety or not knowing anything that's happening really started frustrating me, because you can tell that at least Matt in this situation is genuinely scared. And I think at this point, she should know Matt's history with Fisk if he said anything about that. He doesn't have to say anything about the Daredevil part, but at least the other stuff, which didn't have to do with anything about Daredevil. But it's weird because McDuffie seems more sympathetic to Matt about what's going on. Yes, she's obviously, more worried because he does seem like he's going crazy. But she seems more willing to listen, while Kristen is very blah, 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 blah. No, he's the mayor. He's doing good. And it really annoyed me. What did you think? Because it was really weird to me. And it goes me into something I do want to talk about a little bit later. But speaking of Fisk, we see him in the aftermath of the shooting, talking with Vanessa, being very happy that, she is alive, which is always weird seeing Fisk actually caring about another person. but it's his wife, so that makes sense. And it looks like he did know what she did in hiring Bullseye, since, he got out. But we finally get to see what he was trying to do with the port. The place that he was trying to say, oh, it's not for criminal intentions at all. Yeah, he was using it for criminal intentions. He's using it basically like a drug ring, at least from what I noticed at this point. I could be wrong. And you can tell that Vanessa is enjoying this. Like, she's finally happy that her husband is finally being honest with her about it. That his criminal empire is coming back and he's being Kingpin again. And Vanessa is the right-hand man now. Well, the wife in this case, right? But it looks like we're all sort of full circle because Daredevil's back and Kingpin is completely back now with his woman. And we see everything going well for Kingpin because he is having a meeting about shutting down the city, about sealing everything off because of Poindexter, and probably so he can have much more control. And seeing his rage, seeing his anger, you can see the fear on everyone else's eyes. Gallo is obviously not as scared because he's a cop too. But from what happens later on, maybe he should have been a little more scared. But I'm really confused about this one specific part, right? He talks to his right-hand man about, Matt's condition, right? And I thought they were going to do a thing where, like, since that Matt basically saved Kingpin, that Kingpin couldn't really go after Matt or expose him at all, since, he saved him. But it looks like they're switching it up, that actually he is willing to kill Matt or get his right-hand man to do it. So I don't know why Matt would even do this in the first place. Well, obviously it's for him being a good person and, actually wanting to make sure he doesn't die, which at this point, Matt, you should have let him die. You let Poindexter out and he killed people, and then you just caused your worst enemy to be even more in charge, which is a terrible decision. And now he's after to kill you, so there you go. But besides all that, we get to see that Fisk is talking to his secretary lady. I always forget her name, I'm sorry. I finally figured out Daniels, but her name always escaped me. But it looks like Fisk is talking to her, basically asking who is on his side, who is loyal to specifically him, which is horrible. But he basically asks everyone who is in and who's not in. And I really don't like what she does, but I thought she would actually be a good person in this case. But I guess that's not really true, because she does end up talking to Gallo, who obviously is not on Fisk's side. And Gallo even points out how bad Fisk is getting or is being. And she seems to be on his side, kind of, because she's giving him ways out, which I am so glad that he's finally having a way out. But again, we know this leads into something bad. Speaking of something bad, the right-hand man to Fisk is in the hospital, ready to kill Matt. But obviously Matt heard that, which is always cool to see Matt's powers. And then he just escapes. So that's cool. And since Matt was able to finally escape, he went to his home, right? Since there is a blackout, which I'm not sure where this blackout came from. Was it because of Fisk? I have no idea. But you know who else is in Matt's apartment? Frank Castle is back for the season finale. I was not expecting that, because I heard that, he was only going to be here a very short amount of time. But the fact that he's here makes it all worth it, especially for what happens. Because Matt and Frank's whole dynamic in this episode is very friend-brother-like. They hate and love each other at the same time, and you can tell that. And their ideologies are still very different. Matt will not kill anyone, while Punisher literally does. I feel like all the gore, all the brutality is mainly from Punisher in this episode, and Fisk in a little bit later. But I do love the fact that Matt and Frank do team up together. They work so well. But something that I find really interesting here as well is the fact that the police are after Matt Murdock and they were ready to kill him. Now, the reason why I find that strange isn't just because of the fact that they're going after Matt. It's because, why are they going after Matt? I don't think that Fisk told them that he is Daredevil. He's a vigilante. Because if he does, Vanessa goes to jail. At least I still think that's the case. I don't know if that could still happen now. But this entire part was so awesome. The fighting that happened, the ninja moves that Matt was able to do, and then Punisher's brutality. He didn't let anyone live. And you can tell that Matt still doesn't like this. He was trying to tell Frank to stop killing, but Frank did not. And I like the fact that their ideology were still in clash while they were fighting. And I love how you can tell how each one fight. You can see Matt is a little more with technique and skill, while Frank is very brutal and animalistic and rageful, since he actually kills people. This entire scene was just so cool to watch. And very bloody. Like I said, I think a lot of the brutality and gore comes from the Punisher, to be honest. Like Matt breaking bones, in the beginning of the show, is one thing, but Frank slitting throats, stabbing people like nothing, and blowing people's brains off is a whole different thing. So yeah. But when they were done with everything, with all the fighting and basically killing, there was one guy left, and it looked like it was the guy that kicked Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, and kind of knew it was this specific guy because of the leaks that came out. And if you didn't, did you think it was a twist? Did you know, or did you also think that this guy had killed the White Tiger? I'm curious about that. But obviously, Matt and Frank are having their discussions about whether this guy lives or dies. And to make that point, Frank literally killed another one of the soldiers, or police officers, which I do think did not deserve that death, to be honest. While this guy still survived, and the only reason why he survived, because I do feel like Frank would have killed him, is because there was a grenade throwing at them, and they had to jump to escape. Now, I do feel like that one police officer, the one that killed the White Tiger, is dead now. So I do feel like his storyline is just done, and I wish they had done more with that, to be honest, and I will talk about that a little bit more in the end of this video. And the way they survive is obviously with Matt's Billy Club. They escape the window and they basically crash on a car. But then we get to finally see who had brought Frank to finally save Daredevil. Because we saw that he was kind of secluded, and we were going to be wondering how he got back. And it looked like it was because Karen is back! That's awesome. I missed her so much in this entire show. I'm glad they finally brought her back to the show, and I'm glad they were able to bring everything back together. With her, now it feels like a successor to the Daredevil show, because it feels like we're all back. Yes, Foggy's dead, but it does feel like a family's back together, and we get more of that when we see, they're hiding out, and Matt and Karen are talking together and acting like old buddies, talking about what's been going on, how they feel about each other, and how they still really care about it, as, being very cheeky about it. Now, this also gets me into something that I do want to talk about, and I will be a little longer, so bear with me. These two have so much chemistry, and that's probably because the actors have, played the same actors for a long time in the last show, and maybe it has to do something with it, but I do feel like Matt in the show had literally no real chemistry with Kristen at all. They just felt like they were trying to be a relationship, but there was way too much conflict in it to, feel like actually something was going on. Yes, I know, maybe that was the point. Maybe that Matt is too closed off and wants his old life back, but it never felt like there was any love between it, even though Kristen and Matt had said they love each other so much. But while here, it feels like we're back to the old status quo of Karen and Matt being very sweet to each other. So I'm not sure about this entire situation. What do you think? Do you like that she's back? Does this feel like the old Daredevil show now? Or do you still wish that it was a little different? But Frank is obviously, done with everything. He was there to help Matt because Karen had asked him, but even Karen points out that, he does care. Even though he acts like a cold monster, he does care about these people. And you can obviously tell that because Frank and Karen have had this sibling bond, and it was so sweet. But while that's going on, we get to see what Daniel's up to, since, he has more power and is more in control. He's basically trying to see what the council is doing and how he can make him be more on Fisk's side, and basically having a shit list, basically, on who Fisk can probably kill. And I'm wondering how manipulative and evil Daniel is becoming, or enjoying the power, because he feels like he's having so much control now. Now, obviously, beforehand, I just thought of him as a joke, and maybe that was what he was supposed to be, but it looks like he's actually trying to be a danger, and I do feel like he will become the Rose, at least later on, and I hope so, because I don't want him to just be a random character. I feel like he'd be a waste. But then we also get to see how the city is reacting to everything with the BB report. And again, I do like this entire thing where it feels like the city is more connected to Daredevil than he did beforehand with this, whole thing, and how the city is dealing with this blackout, and it seems bad. People are losing, people are going crazy, burning things. And this becomes a very bad thing for one person because he's obviously trying to steal stuff because, it's a raid, but he gets stopped to the police and he surrenders, but they immediately shoot him and they pretend he was a vigilante, even though he was a kid. And I didn't expect the police to use vigilantes as an excuse to kill them. Like, I knew they were gonna abuse their power, but not like this. Dang, that's bad. What are they gonna do about the people who have COVID masks? Because people still wear those. Are they dead? But back to Matt and Karen. Again, I love their dynamic. It feels like we're back home, if that makes sense. They're basically trying to figure out what happened and why Foggy was shot. Like, they basically went to a place where they can find evidence, find old cases to figure out what happened, right? And I like this little thing because they go into one of the cases and Matt finds an engraving of avocados, and I find it funny that they were able to bring this joke back. This is where they were able to bring back an old joke from the original series where Matt and Foggy in college were talking about what they were doing and how Foggy should have spoke Spanish, and he basically misspelled the Spanish word for lawyers, abogados, to avocados, and that became a running joke. And I liked how they were able to, bring that back, of making it more obvious that this is the Daredevil Netflix successor. And it was really heartwarming. I really felt that, and it was really sweet. But back to business, they are obviously figuring out what happened, how Foggy got shot, and it turned out because he actually was getting really close to something he was not supposed to by Vanessa, and Vanessa needed him out of the way with also Benny. And it feels so sad that he was just doing his job and it caused him to be killed. And it was because he was getting into the ports, right? He was figuring out that she was doing something illegal in the ports. And now Fisk is mayor. He's doing so much to the ports to have more control and basically have every illegal thing be legal there, because apparently that's a very gray area. And basically Matt has to figure out how to stop that. But you know how, Matt and Karen are figuring out what's going on? We get to see what Frank's doing, and he's basically just trying to sulk and figure out what he's doing with his life because, he does care about Matt, he does care about Karen, and he wants them to be okay. So you know what he does? He goes back out there to fight more of the cops, but he gets overwhelmed and he gets beat up very bad. He did put up a good fight and killed a lot of the cops, but it really was bad. And you can tell that these were all fanatics of the Punisher because they were wearing Punisher Skull bulletproof vests as well, which I do want to talk about in a second. But then while he is knocked out, we get to see what happened to Gallo. He's trying to finally escape, talking Fisk's right-hand woman and to basically ask for help. And he basically gets this guy, who apparently is his friend, to help him leave. But obviously this does not happen because he gets dragged to this very secluded place with Fisk and a bunch of his task force wearing Punisher logos. And speaking of Punisher logos, we get to see where Frank was held, and it looks like there was a bunch of these guys wearing the Punisher logo, basically talking about how they admire him, how they love him, about what he's doing. And Frank is spitting in their faces, basically saying, they're clowns, they're stupid, this is a circus, right? And I like this, but I do feel like it misses a lot of what the Punisher originally said in his original comics, where in real life, a lot of police officers would have the Punisher logo on their gear, and then he had to tell police officers to not follow him. He strictly had to tell them that. And I feel like him not telling any of the cops at all kind of makes it harder for people to know that his logo is a bad thing. You are not supposed to have that on your body, if that makes sense. I feel like the fact that, he just calls him a clown is strictly only to these people who wear the Punisher logo, not to anyone who does that, not any police officers, not any military people. I feel like that kind of dulls down the message, at least to me. What do you think? Do you think this message was well done here, or do you think that it was dulled down? I'd really like to know. But since, he basically says no, he gets knocked out again. And honestly, I thought they'd kill him, to be honest. But speaking of killing, we go back to seeing what Gallo is doing with Fisk and the police. Fisk is basically saying, how Gallo is stopping him from saving the city and saying, he's terrible and all this stuff. And he did something I did not expect him at all to do at all. He crushes his skull, and you actually see it. I was genuinely sweating bullets when I saw that. I was surprised how gruesome they were able to be. We obviously saw people's necks getting sliced, bullets getting shot at them, right? And we got to see people get really broken up, right? But this guy's face got smushed, and we saw it, and that was brutal. But I do feel like there was a problem here. It was brutal, but I felt like it could have been much more brutal if he had screamed in pain. The fact that he didn't scream in pain kind of dulled down the fear of it all. I think screams do embody a lot of our fear factors when it comes to, because it does feel real. Maybe that was a thing they couldn't do, that it was too far, because they did make Fisk karate chop Gal's neck before, so he doesn't scream. So maybe that was the point. But I feel like that scream could have made it more impactful and much more sad. But nonetheless, this was still extremely brutal and very gross and very awesome, to be honest. And we got to see the strength of Kingpin. That was cool. But since that happened, everything feels so hopeless. Nothing feels like it could, get better. And you can see that when Karen and Matt are talking about what to do. Since Fisk has everyone now. He has the police. He has the people. He is in the government. He has true power. And Matt is literally one guy. And even though I feel like there should be more superheroes, and I feel like that's a problem, and that became a problem when they couldn't add Spider-Man's cameo in this show. It makes it feel like everyone else a little more selfish, and it makes Sony really stupid, because then this would have been really cool. But nonetheless, it does make Matt feel very sheltered and feel very out of his depth. But I do like that Karen and Matt still bond over what they can and try to actually try to do the best. And since, Fisk has an army, Matt will get an army for himself as well. But the next morning, we get to see how everything happened in the aftermath. We get to see that Fisk recruits Kristen to his side as a mental health person in Fisk's campaign now, which is really not that good. Why did she not listen to anything Matt had said? Does she not believe him at all? Is she doing this to infiltrate Fisk's organization? I don't know. Kristen can go either way, because I'm going to be very honest, her character was very okay, to be honest. I wish she got more attention, but what can we do? And then we get to see how everyone else is dealing with it, and that Fisk is making himself feel much better by using Gallo's quote-unquote disappearance, his death, as a marketing stunt for everyone to believe him, to want him to fix everything, because he basically says that Gallo left to escape from everything, because technically that was what he was going to try to do, but he's dead now. He can't do anything about that. And also, he can't rat out all the people in the task force. So what's going to happen there? We see BB's there. We see how Angela's dealing with it. Come on, girl. You gotta be the next White Tiger. Come on, save the city too. You have the power. But then we also get to see how Matt and Karen are doing about everything. Nothing is going well. Nothing is going their way. But it looks like they are getting that team. They go to Josie's. Karen and Matt are talking, and they go and sing all the people that are on Daredevil's side. But since Matt had his mask off and was talking to Karen, does everyone know that Matt is Daredevil at this point? Cherry knows. Karen knows. I'm not sure if anyone else does. And I'm saying that because he does put his mask back on. So what's going on here? And how are they going to stop Fisk? And speaking of Fisk, we get to see that his entire world is coming together, because him and Vanessa go back down to the basement that he had to contain Adam, and now he uses it as a prison for all the vigilantes, everyone that he deems unfit to be in civilization. Looks like they kept the swordsman there and the Punisher. I thought these people would be dead. I don't know why he has these prisons. Does he think they will give him knowledge? Because usually, if they don't serve any purpose to the Kingpin, he just kills them. So what's the point? Is it so people don't assume that these guys are dead? What is going on here? But he's got his power, and it looks like Daniel is trying to be a mini Fisk because of how he moves. Tries to act very Fisk-like. He obviously has a power chip and is getting very messed up. And I'm actually pretty excited on what's going to happen to him in the next season because I want to see if he actually becomes a supervillain. Now, that would be the finale of Daredevil, but they have an end credit scene of Frank getting this guy to trust him, one of the security guards, to make him feel safe and, give him a handshake, and is able to escape and is probably going to get everyone out. So that's awesome. So that was Daredevil, episode 9, the finale. And I actually really liked this episode. This episode did not feel like any filler, any cut Frankenstein thing together. It felt like its final thing that they're able to do. Yes, this episode does have that, Netflix thing of not really ending, but I'm giving it slack because they get another chance in season 2, and season 2 will most likely not be a mess. Will actually be a cohesive story without the another version of the show holding it down. And I really like that. So I am very excited for season 2. Yes, I know there was leaked images of what Daredevil will look like in that season. I really am happy that he finally has the double Ds and has the black suit. I'm wondering why he wear the black suit, but I'm going to hold my thoughts until the next season. But this show was a wild ride to get through. It originally was really fun to review, but after a while, it started getting really weird. Not because the show was bad. Yes, there were things that did feel a little weird, but it's because I got copyrighted like shit throughout this entire show. I don't understand why a lot of people have reviewed the show, and I have mentioned it a few times. I don't know why, to the point where I know this video will probably not get out when I want it to. It'll probably get out probably a week after this show had already finished. And that's probably because I had a lot of editing, because this video probably took me longer to do. And I have to get through copyright stuff. But I am still happy with the fact that I reviewed it. Now, will I review it for the second season? I am not 100% sure. Maybe I'll start for the first episode, and I hope they don't copyright me. But if it doesn't work, then I hope that this was a fun ride watching me review this show. But if we do get to the next season, come with me to watch that next season. But if there's nothing else, this has been Dynamite. I hope everyone stays dirty, and I hope to see everyone in the next video. Bye!